For the 57th year, nearly 600 passionate amateur racers have gathered to select their national champions under a unique format. One race, winner take all. And for the first time in 7 years, their stage is America's National Park of Speed, Road America. Welcome to the Sports Car Club of America Runoffs, our broadcast presented by Mazda. At historic Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, 24 Scca Runoffs national champions have already been crowned, and that leaves 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the penultimate race of the 2020, the 57th annual Scca National Championship Runoffs. I'm Bob Varsha. Tom O'Gorman's alongside. Hayward Wagner down in the pits, and we are ready for the GT Lights class. And we've got quite an interesting story right up front, Tom.
Yeah, right at the front, Chris Bovis on the pole by over 6 seconds. The rest of the field has had nothing for the man on the pole the rest of this week. But GT Light, it's a really cool class, consolidated from GT4 and GT5 a number of years ago. The drivers with those cars had the options to bump up to GT3 or consolidate down into GT Light. And what that means is options. We have a big variety of prep levels and styles across the field of cars, but that man right there that we're taking a look at, he's standing just behind Hayward Wagner. That car on pole by a lot.
Boy, that should make for an interesting race. Let's get more of the backstory now with Hayward.
As Tom was saying, GT Light is a very interesting class, and it's really a class that hasn't found its identity yet. It's only existed for a few years. You have some folks that are coming over for production racing. You have the consolidation of GT4 and 5. But Chris Bovis is really the person who has figured this class out the fastest, no pun intended, with that 6-second gap. For Chris, his goal is to get through turn 1 and then set a pace. But for everybody else, it's try to disrupt that pace to get around him on the start as soon as possible. And all he has to worry about is 9-time runoffs champion Joe Huffaker sitting on the outside of the front row in his F Production midget, which he's got set up for GT Light this year. I talked to Joe. He said 2020 has just been a super tough year for him and the team. He wanted to focus on one race at the runoffs. He chose this one. So what's this race really going to come down to? Can Bovis keep his pace up for the entire race? Can Huffaker and the rest of the group chase him down? And don't forget, guys, it's Sunday afternoon. These guys haven't been on track since Thursday. A lot of rubber has gone down. There have been a lot of weather changes, so you might see some mistakes early because of the amount of time between the last session and now.
That's a great point. Thank you, Hayward. And in addition to the 10-time champion that Tom mentioned, Joe Huffaker, we've also got Michael Lewis in this class, and he has 10 runoffs gold medals among his 20 total medals in Scca runoffs competition. So, a lot of questions to be answered. The first corner is going to be exciting as everybody tries to stem the tide that is Chris Bovis. Cars are headed for the track, so let's check out how they will line up. Beginning with our tire rack pole sitter, Chris Bovis, Overland Park, Kansas, in his Honda CRX with that 6+ second gap over the field. Joe Huffaker, Petaluma, California, is next in an MG Midget. On row 2, Lance Stout from Cornelius, Oregon in a Nissan Sentra, and Jonathan Goodale from Conifer, Colorado in a Mazda MX-5. On row 3, Peter Shadowin from West Palm Beach, Florida in a Honda CRX, and Graham Fuller from Summit Point, West Virginia in another CRX. On row 4, Michael Lewis from Poway, California, as I mentioned, already 1 gold medal in this championships. He's in a Mazda RX-7. And he'll be starting next to Charles Leonard from Palmetto, Florida in a Nissan 200 SX SER. On row 5, Scott Twomey from Tacoma, Washington in a Toyota Tercel, and Bill Meyer from Russellville, Missouri in another Toyota Tercel. On row 6, Roy Lopshire from Blue Springs, Missouri in yet another Toyota Tercel, and Jamie Blust from Johnstown, Ohio in an Austin Healey Sprite. And on the 7th and final row, Taz Harvey, a familiar face at this championships. He's been in a variety of classes. He's out of Danville, California in a Mazda Miata for this race. And the last man in the field, Edward Nicholson from Kansas City, Missouri in a Nissan 200 CX. Now, as in every other class here at the runoffs, there were qualifying awards handed out on the Sunoco 260 Tuesday of qualifying. 10 free gallons of gas went to Lance Stout of Cornelius, Oregon for his Nissan Sentra because he posted the qualifying time that ended with 3 digits to the right of the decimal, closest to 270. His time, 2 minutes 43 point, 260, 2 minutes 43.270, 1/100th of a second off of perfect, as it were. And on day 2, Hawk Brakes presented their Breakthrough Performance Award to Charles Leonard of Palmetto, Florida, and his Nissan 200SX for making the biggest improvement from day 1 to day 2. In his case, about 2.6 seconds. So congratulations to him. As mentioned, Chris Bovis dominated qualifying to take the Tire Rack Pole Award. Well, it is getting late in the championships as well as the day, Tom, and you have to wonder if people are just getting anxious to hit the road with these championships still on the line.
I have to imagine after sitting around for a couple of days in any other year, you might have been able to go adventuring a little bit, check out this area of Wisconsin, but probably not much of that this year, which means these drivers have just been watching everybody else have their fun for nearly 3 days since they last qualified. And again, that kind of means a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. Car to watch is that number 32 car just on the right side of your frame, Michael Lewis. That car is doing double duty in GT3 and GT Light. That means engine swaps every time they want to race in a different category, and they've had a really hard time of it, specifically in GT Light. You notice he's mired on the grid 7th deep with a 239.9. That car should be really quick, but just didn't have a lot of luck in qualifying this week. As you can see, no times on the first and third days, respectively.
That's a lot of busted knuckles. Running 3 different classes, I believe, is Michael Lewis, and 2, as you mentioned, with the same car. So the engine has to come out of that one. Well, at least it's warmed up. We started out this morning. It was about 49 degrees in contrast to beautiful weather we'd seen all week long. Right now, it's heated up all the way to a balmy 56 degrees as these drivers take to the track for the next to last race of the championship here at historic Road America.
It's worth noting that although we've painted the picture that Chris Bovis is kind of dominant in this field, the next 7 cars on the grid, starting with Joe Huffaker, are all on the same 2.5 or so. So the race for second place theoretically should be extremely tight. It's just a matter of whether or not Chris Bovis can get clear of the field fast enough and just start turning in those clean laps. Again, keep an eye on Michael Lewis. Also in the field, Peter Shadowin is the yellow CRX 5 cars back. That car had some mechanical issues this week as well. Might have some speed left in it. You can see the big variety of cars panning through Canada Corner.
There's a car that's easy to spot, the bright yellow 04 of Jonathan Goodale out of the Colorado region. The Sports Car Club of America operates out of 115 or so different regions, sub-regions, conferences, divisions, and so on. All of them are very active, some 2,000 events in not only road racing, but also rallying, pro solo, and more. But right now it's all about road racing, and we're all about the GTL class as the safety car prepares to pull off. And our pole sitter, our dominating pole sitter, Chris Bovis, leads the field to the green flag. Let's see how quickly he can open up a lead, if he can, or if someone like the wily veteran Joe Huffaker can make life difficult for him. Well, Bovis taking no chances. He's got a car length on Huffaker as the flag waves, and we're away.
Pretty spread out at the start. A lot of space on this front straightaway as this relatively small field sweeps into turn 1. But a challenge for second place right off the bat. That's Lance Stout at the inside of Joe Huffaker. Not able to complete that pass for second place.
Around turn 1 under the Briggs and Stratton Bridge, and down to turn 3.
Look at Peter Shadow in the 72 car. That is a rear-wheel drive tube-frame GT car with a CRX body on it. So it's got a Honda motor and a Honda body on it, but it is a rear-wheel drive race car. He's up from 5th place, challenging for 3rd on Lance Stout. And a majority of the cars in this field are kind of that almost circle track style tube-frame chassis with a body and an engine to match. So if it's got a Nissan body, it's got a Nissan engine, but that is absolutely not a Nissan chassis. Look at Shadow and on the charge.
Absolutely, he is as they enter turn 5. He goes by Huffaker. uphill, blind turn 6. May see a puff of tire smoke as the cars get light over the brow.
Oh, Joe Huffaker going around, I think, as we left the frame. No, he saves it, but that meant that Graham Fuller actually got into the back end of Lance Stout trying to check up and avoid that big tank slapper from the 77 car, the many-time national champion, having a big moment in turn 6.
What a crowd through turn 7. Now hurry downs. Downhill run to turn 8. Well, you said it off the top. Aside from Bovis, our pole sitter, things are pretty closely matched. And right now, nobody can find some clean racetrack.
And that is Graham Fuller in the number 2 car. It's a very similar car. I think the same builder, actually, as Chris Bovis is up at the front. Although it is still a tube frame GT-style car, that is a front-wheel drive car. And he had engine problems after day 2 of qualifying, had to do a complete engine swap that took him all 3 days that he had to get out here. He's now charging into the top 5.
Through the infamous kink that has claimed a number of cars this weekend.
Tight stuff between Shadowin and that is Jonathan Goodale, who finished in the podium positions on the track last year at VIR, was stripped of that podium position in impound afterwards. So he's looking for redemption. That's the yellow CRX. Sorry, MX-5.
Going back to turn 5.
So watch as Peter Shadowin comes into turn number 6. It looks like he gets a little bit crossed up, and Joe Huffaker does as well. As we change here, there is a little moment for both of those drivers. Almost wonder if there was something down on the surface, and then Graham Fuller almost turns Lance Stout as they all check up.
Huffaker could barely get back onto the racetrack. It was so crowded. Around to complete lap 1. Chris Bovis already well across the line. 5.6 seconds, the gap back to second place. Peter Shadowin.
And that's pretty close to the deficit he had on the grid. Whoa, it's a crash. Lance Stout and Jonathan Goodale get together on the way into turn 1. There was no need for that. I don't know what happened between those two, but they lost track of where each other were on the braking zone.
Fuller got tapped by Lance Stout for good measure on the track. He continued apparently unaffected, but that was a bit bizarre.
Yeah, I think they all got away with one because there was not many heavy contacts there, but we'll take another look at it. Looks like Lance Stout just kind of slammed the door in the braking zone. They were working way towards each other.
Like he didn't even know he was there. And Stout swings around. Just a kiss there on Graham Fuller. Backside now, down into turn 5. Huffaker. Big gap has now opened up.
Check out this battle. This is for third place now. Peter Shadowin well up the road in the yellow CRX, but that is the 11 car of Scott Toomey, who started 9th. He now holds the 3rd position, kind of in that retro John Player Special inspired livery in his Toyota Tercel. That's again a GT style car, rear wheel drive Toyota engine with a Toyota body on it. Very little Tercel left there.
Carousel they go.
Joe Huffaker, I think, is a little bit of the little kid on the block. He's getting bullied around a bit. This race had that moment early on, and it's worth noting the previous race to this one was Formula V. Formula V has a tendency to leave its mark on the surface, if you know what I mean. A little bit of oil potentially down here and there, and that might be what caught both Shadowin and Huffaker out on that first lap.
That's a good point. We had a couple of smokers in that race, so maybe slick.
So Scott Toomey holding down 3rd position just in front of Joe Huffaker. Michael Lewis has been pretty quiet in this race, but that car is in the fight for the podium positions. Just off the back of this battle for 3rd.
Climbing through the Billy Mitchell bend. Up front, over the brow. Here comes Chris Bovis. We'll check the time when 2nd place Peter Shadowin gets here. 6.150.
So only about a second faster this time through between Chris Bovis and Peter Shadowin. Very different cars, even though they both look like Honda CRXs. That is a rear-wheel drive GT-style CRX-bodied race car, proper race car for Peter Shadowin, and looks like a pass for 3rd place on Huffaker.
Maybe. Huffaker holds on. There's a lot of experience in that little number 77.
It's another challenger in this fight, another Toyota Tercel, this time Ray Lopsher, who's in that red Toyota Tercel, almost an identical looking car to the car in front of him of Scott Toomey. So this battle for third is expanded up into 4 cars now. The more they fight, watch for Graham Fuller and Jonathan Goodale to come back into their own.
Huffaker right in the middle of the road as they come down to 5.
Lopsher up the inside of Toomey. They're still side by side and trying the over-under. Does Toomey. Doesn't get the run that he would have liked up the hill to turn 6. So that means Roy Lopsher from 11th on the grid all the way up to 4th. And even I mentioned that the next 7 cars behind Chris Bovis on the grid were pretty tight. You might as well have thrown them all in there. They were all pretty tight in qualifying. So this field, very similar on pace. Bovis removed.
Just before lunchtime, we thought we were getting reports of light misting on parts of the racetrack, but it hasn't become anything. Bits of sunshine popped through in the most recent 2 races after the lunch hour. And now it's fully overcast again. Oh, Huffaker off and on.
That's just how hard these drivers are pushing. They may be a couple of seconds off the pace of the leader, but they're absolutely on the limit. There's a bunch of national championships between a couple of these drivers. And now Roy Lopsher assumes 3rd place as Joe Huffaker rejoins side by side with Scott Toomey. Michael Lewis still kind of hunting in the background. That car is a defending champion in GT3 from just days ago.
Lewis looks like he's being held up just that little bit.
Yeah, he's the slowest car in the trap speeds. We measure the peak speed of these cars every lap as they come onto the brakes in turn 5. He is 116 miles an hour into that corner. Peter Shadowin is the fastest at 130, so he is significantly slower in a straight line with that RX-7, which is going to make it tough to race.
You betcha. Everybody moving to the right side. You can see the road kind of angles downhill left to right. So it's theoretically at least a shorter distance and less steep of a climb if you stay to the right side. And of course, racers will look for any kind of advantage.
It's another challenge on Joe Huffaker. Looks like he's having a hard time holding his own. Just as we identified Michael Lewis, not exactly the fastest car in a straight line, but Lewis gets a really good run through turn 1 to challenge Joe Huffaker down into turn 3, puts the RX-7 in position, and now that's up to 5th place for Michael Lewis. You see just the size difference between those 2 cars, and Joe Huffaker, the only car in the field that is more of a production style car, transferring over from F production into GT Light.
Down to 5 again. On the inside goes Michael Lewis.
Look who's back. Graham Fuller and Jonathan Goodale. Goodale, even after that off in turn 1, is back. This is becoming more of a 6-car battle for the bronze. Remember, far up the road, Chris Bovis leading by 5.5 seconds. Peter Shadowin up the road from this battle by the tune of 20 seconds. And then it's Roy Lopsher, Joe Huffaker, Scott Toomey, Michael Lewis, Graham Fuller, Jonathan Goodale. 7 cars in the fight for the bronze.
Tom, a lot of viewers at home are not familiar with the rule book might be saying, well, how come a car can be so much faster in class?
Well, I think it just comes down to development. Chris Bovis was one of the early adopters to the GT Light category after it was developed in 2005. We mentioned it was consolidated from GT4 and 5. Just not enough subscription to either of those 2 classes, but very similar rule sets, so they lumped them together. And Bovis was actually the first-time champion in GT Light all the way back in 2007. So he's coming up on 15 years in the class. And if you've got 15 years experience in a car and a class that's especially won the runoffs a couple times, 3 times over its history, it's just kind of tough to catch up to somebody who's that far ahead of the ball.
Right. And it's worth mentioning that the rule book is a constantly evolving process as new technologies come along, the car count switches in terms of availability and competitor interest. And so the SCCA tries to maintain space for anyone who wants to race just about anything, but of course you have to fall into one class or another. So the rules are shaped to allow the greatest possible competition.
Now, Chris Bovis at the front is a very experienced driver, and that is a, as near as makes no difference, professionally built race car. Peter Shadowin's car is a little more home developed, and he was the fastest car on the track last time through. So Shadowin has found over 5 seconds of pace in that car since qualifying. He's got a little bit of the man on the move. So is Jonathan Goodale, though, challenging Graham Fuller. This is still that battle that moves up to basically third place through about 8th.
Lock up from Lewis there as he tried to stay out of the back of the 2 cars ahead of him.
You can see Lewis is basically clinging onto the back of whoever he's with, but doesn't really have the opportunity to race them. And again, that RX-7 seems to be down on straight line speed. He's dropped off the back of Jonathan Goodale, despite that they were side by side coming into turn 3. There's what the difference in straight line speed looks like. Up ahead of them just a little bit, Joe Huffaker takes the position back from the 11 of Scott Toomey, so Huffaker back up to 4th. All this bickering has allowed Roy Lopshire to pull away just a little bit, and they've got to be careful not to let that happen too much.
Here's your race leader, Chris Bovis. Looks like a beautifully prepared CRX as well, which always helps, even if you're within the rules. The level of preparation can make a difference between race cars and their success.
Sure, and there's also a little bit of a different race strategy between these 2 cars, both being Honda CRXs in some spirit, but the leader, Chris Bovis, a little more true to form. It's a front-wheel drive CRX, and that means that he's using both front wheels to do all the work, whereas Peter Shadowin, you can see the profile of that car a little bit smaller, and it is also a rear-wheel drive car, which means it uses both the front and rear tires evenly over the race. So Chris Bovis, what I'm watching, appears to be a little bit of race management. The fastest lap that he's turned is a little over 1.5 seconds off of his qualifying pace, which isn't much, but it's just enough that says he's not trying to burn that car down too much too early.
Looking for the gap from Bovis back to Shadowin. It's come down just slightly, 4.4 seconds. So as you say, Bovis may have established his lead. Now he's just going to maintain it.
And he's experienced enough to know what that looks like and how to do it from the front. Again, though, Peter Shadowin, fastest car on the track at 2:32.2 that time. So that's now well over 6 seconds faster than he was able to go in qualifying. Taking a look at the 3rd place car of Scott Toomey. Crosses the start-finish line. These guys are over 30 seconds down from the leaders, but you can see there's a lot of cars in this fight still. Side by side for Toomey and Fuller. Toomey's going to take the position back, but Fuller is in a very similar car to Chris Bovis in the lead. That's a front-wheel drive CRX, semi-tube frame car. It's a great scrap between these 3.
Still looking for a way by, can't find one. They have an opportunity here. This is known as the Moraine Sweep. Through the trees down to turn 5.
Trying to see if I saw maybe a little bit of smoke from the back of the 77 car. That is Joe Huffaker running in 4th. I think I saw a slight haze under the back end of that MG Midget as he accelerated down the Marine Straight, which is...
I think he's losing speed.
No, I think he's okay for now. It's not that unordinary to see a little puff of smoke here or there from the little British cars, but gotta be aware of it at least.
Well, Huffaker managed to clock a top speed of 120 going down into turn 5. So he's only 10 miles an hour off official fastest car.
Let's say 120 helmet buffeting miles an hour in that MG Midget. You see his head just poking up over the profile of what would have been the windshield. Continuing to run 4th, but dropped pretty far off the back. Oh, ooh, a little mechanical issue. I think a failure for Scott Toomey.
Well, I think Scott Toomey suddenly looked to his right and he caught that yellow flash. Jonathan Goodale's car. Well, now he's not returned to speed, and in fact, he's going to pull off.
Yeah, we've seen that a couple times over this week in the long sustained load from the carousel. Oh, gets it fired and decides to keep going.
Maybe he's using that chicane that was added for motorcycle events here at this just impossibly quick Road America track.
And so we were hearing maybe an issue in the shifting for that car, and as your car is loaded up in that carousel, if you have to grab a gear in the middle with the whole driveline twisted and the weight towed to the outside, the car can sometimes be tough to get into gear. So maybe Toomey couldn't find a gear for a bit, was hunting for a second, and now he seems to be back at pace.
Worst of all, he may have been caught in no gear at all.
Yeah.
Going nowhere until the car straightens up.
That's unfortunate because he had been on a heck of a run, up from 9th, challenging for a bronze medal at points. Roy Lopsher from 11th has kind of solidified that 3rd place so far.
Back to the leader. The gap down to 2.4 seconds. Bovis to Shadowing. I'm not sure Bovis wanted the lead to be that minute.
Yeah, this race is taking a bit of a different shape than we all expected. Peter Shadowin last time threw a 2:31.6. That is faster than the pole time that Chris Bovis was able to set. Last time across the line for Chris Bovis was a 2:33.6, so that's 2 seconds advantage to Peter Shadowin. And that little yellow CRX is getting a little bigger and a little bigger every moment with Chris Bovis at the front. The question is, how much management is Chris Bovis doing, or is this not the plan?
Well, as Sherlock Holmes might say, the game is now afoot. Bovis and Shadowin about to be engaged for the championship in GTL. Today's broadcast of the SCCA runoffs is brought to you by Mazda. Feel alive.
When the finish line calls, we answer. Hit the road with insurance protection from Haggerty. Whether you drive a built racer, sports car, or exotic, and save an average of $264. Get a quote today at Haggerty.com.
It's happening more often, and that's not surprising. People are getting lost to find themselves. And discovering the best part is often hidden in the journey along the way. The first ever CX-30. Performance that inspires with available iActive all-wheel drive.
Back at Road America, working lap 8 of 13 with a 40-minute absolute time limit on the race, and we're watching the GTL class where Chris Bovis, who took a dominant pole for the class and scampered away to about a 6-second lead early on, now finds his mirrors filling up quickly with that yellow CRX of Peter Shadowin. A moment ago, my colleague Tom O'Gorman mentioned that Shadowin had set the fastest lap of the race to date. He is also the first driver to break 130 miles an hour on this very part of the racetrack down to turn 5.
This race is reminding me so far of a horror movie. The suspense is killing me because we didn't think that we were going to see quite this form of race, but it's properly turning into a battle for the lead. Chris Bovis in the front wheel drive CRX at the front, and then the rear wheel drive CRX GT style car with Peter Shadowin at the wheel all of a sudden has found over 7 seconds of pace in that car since day 3 of qualifying. And all of us are putting our tinfoil hats with different theories as to why Chris Bovis is all of a sudden finding himself with a fight on his hands.
Cue the shark theme from Jaws. Shadowin is right there.
One thought we had, Chris Bovis running the Goodyear tire, and Goodyear is pretty well known for its tire compound programs. There's a number of options that they offer for that car. One of the potentials is in qualifying, he may have been running a soft compound tire that allowed him to utilize more speed than the rest of the field. And then the question becomes, is he still trying to run that tire because of how cool it is and not have any tire left? Or did he switch to a harder compound and that's why he just doesn't have the pace?
Well, this is amazing, frankly. Is Shadowin going to challenge him down to turn 5? He is. He's going to drive right by him before they even get there.
Just blew his doors off into the braking zone for Canada Quarter. A new leader in GT Light, Peter Shadowin, out of, not going to say nowhere, but now it looks like a mechanical problem for Chris Bovis.
Oh, my. When things were going so well.
Yeah, heartbreaking on lap 8 of 13. If this was an 8-lap race, he might still cling on for a podium position. Now the car sounds like it's back on song.
He hasn't got it floored. Now it looks like he's heading for the pit lane.
Heartbreaking for multi-time past national champion Chris Bovis.
How many times this weekend have we heard our ourselves saying this is why we run the races, because of the astonishing twists and turns, the attrition, the car that suddenly finds the right combination for winning speed. It just goes on and on and on, class after class.
And one of the themes this week has also been these drivers not only racing each other, but racing the track. A lot of drivers have been here for 7, 8, 9, 10 days. And the longer you lap Road America, the more likely you are to rattle the wrong bolt loose. Now this will get interesting because Chris Bovis was far enough up the road that unless these drivers have radio communication to the pit lane with the team, they won't have seen that he broke down, and they probably won't have been able to see that he's in the pit lane. So this is Roy Lopscher and Joe Huffaker, who have inherited podium positions. They may not know that.
Right. Can't see over that concrete wall at the pit lane, but surely the team can somehow communicate to them, hey, you've just moved up a spot.
That's the tough part. Depends on how big of your team. You sometimes only have the one guy. They may be cheering for you in turn 5. Hopefully on the pit lane as well. So Roy Lopscher holding down second place over Joe Huffaker in 3rd. Graham Fuller is the number 2 car, the CRX, that is in 4th. Jonathan Goodale, podium finisher that was stripped of his medal last year, really wants a medal this year, and he runs 6th. And Michael Lewis is still kind of hunting in the background in the blue RX-7.
Ooh, look at the smoke now out of Huffaker's black number 77.
Would you say it's getting worse?
I would definitely say it's getting worse.
Don't let Joe hear you say that. We got to knock on some wood for him, not to make sure he gets that commentator's curse, but he's just kind of lurking in the background of Scott Toomey. Sorry, Roy Lopscher.
If I'm going to curse him, I'd say, well, he's definitely going to go right back to the front. I can see it coming at any moment. That would be a curse.
These drivers kind of pairing up 2 by 2, so it's Lopscher and Huffaker. A little bit of a gap to Fuller and Goodale. Michael Lewis seems to be losing touch just a bit with these front 4.
Into turn 8. Tricky left-hander into the carousel.
Look at this. Joe Huffaker's made some time up in sector 2 so far into the carousel. He is on the entry to that corner, completely on the bumper of Roy Lopscher's car. But Lopscher, with a little bit more downforce, that big wing on the back, is able to sweep through the carousel with a bit more speed.
See, the lap counter is already turned over to 10. That means Peter Shadowin has already crossed start-finish line as these drivers approach Canada corner with 2 more corners to go before they can reach start-finish.
Yeah, Peter Shadowin last time across the line held 34 seconds lead over Roy Lopscher, who's now in 2nd place. Joe Huffaker 3rd, a little bit over a second back from there. So this race will see the checkered flag theoretically well before this battle is over. Cars all look just very composed. Not a lot of drama going on with any of the cars. And I think everybody's just kind of settled into a nice, gentle pace. Not gentle, I should say. A nice, firm pace that everyone's turning personal best laps here and there. But this man maybe can't believe his luck to take the lead over Chris Bovis and then Bovis to break down right after.
So it's Shadowin by 57 seconds and change over Lopscher. Another second or so back is Huffaker. Then Graham Fuller, Jonathan Goodale, Michael Lewis, Bill Mayer, and Chris Leonard.
So look a little further back. That's the 88 of Taz Harvey following the Austin Healey Sprite of Jamie Blust. Taz Harvey's raced a number of times this weekend already, has had a rough week in that Miata as well. But the Bug-Eye Sprite, another one of those production-based cars, pulling away from the Miata down the straight, believe it or not.
Well, I have to smile when I see that little Miata trying to pull a draft off the even littler Bug-Eye Sprite.
Tough to make a Miata look big, but it certainly does look huge next to the Bug-Eye Sprite. Have to imagine it's a little bit of a learning curve when you get a Bug-Eye Sprite out here in GT Light, how small you feel amongst this big field of silhouette-style cars.
It's like being in your go-kart on an interstate.
Exactly. He's trying to make that draft work. Taz Harvey absolutely lockstep behind Jamie Blust. The more aerodynamic that that Miata is, sorry, the more downforce that Miata can make with the wing and a little better, wider stance, I have to imagine Sector 2 is where that car will come alive. We are officially entering Sector 2 once you hit the brakes right here into Turn 5. See if Taz Harvey's got anything for him.
Look at this battle now. Lopshire, Huffaker, Fuller, Goodale. Michael Lewis not out of it.
Not by any stretch. This is getting good for the silver medal. That is Roy Lopshire holding down second place, up from 11th on the grid. Joe Huffaker right behind Graham Fuller in that front-wheel drive CRX. You can see his hands hand over hand just a little bit through Canada corner. Perhaps the front tire is starting to fall away from the number 2 car.
You're right, they do look composed, riding the track well for cars that are capable of right up around a $130 in a straight line.
Yeah, very fast cars, but it's all about momentum. They're light, quick on their feet. The top speeds may not be all that impressive, but they don't have to slow down much. Toomey with a mechanical issue drops out. I'm sorry, Lopshire.
Lopshire. So move Huffaker, Fuller, and Goodale and Lewis up another spot. I thought a minute there that Fuller was going to get Huffaker down into 1, but he does not. And now Goodale is on Fuller.
CRX looks good on the brakes. He wasn't able to do anything with Huffaker, but he easily defended.
Oh.
Wow.
Goodale lucky to get back on track.
Yeah, I thought that one was going to tank slap the other way. I got my Tercel drivers backwards. Apologies to Ray Lopshire. And unfortunately, it looks like he has some sort of issue. The car's still under its own power, but maybe lost top gear or something. So now that means this battle we're looking at now, Joe Huffaker, Graham Fuller, and Jonathan Goodale battling for second place. They may or may not know that. Remember, Chris Bovis broke down so far ahead of them. They may not know that they're battling for the silver and bronze, but Joe Huffaker, you can guarantee, has some radio communication in that MG midget. Looks really good in Sector 2 through this handling section. All these point and shoot corners. He's pulled out a bit of a lead over a much bigger front-wheel drive CRX.
4 cars with 2 podium places at stake. And who knows what's going to happen in the remaining 2+ laps of this race. Well, make it 2 because the lap counter just turned 12 for Peter Shadowin.
Yeah, Peter Shadowin just crossing the line. He's running 2:36 and some change lap times, which is 5 seconds off of the pace he had been running to start to pull in Chris Bovis. I think he knows he's got this one pretty well locked up as long as he finishes, so he's backed well off the pace in that number 72 CRX and doesn't want to risk anything at this point. Can't blame him at all.
That brings up the old racer's argument. Do you keep on going as though there was somebody right on your tail, or do you back out to save the race car and risk one of those embarrassing mistakes that comes when your focus drifts just that little bit?
I think there's a fine line to walk, and maybe in a less high-strung car, you just keep on going. But with cars this high-strung, reliability always a question, and this is the longest race these drivers in SCCA's season will see. Most club races are somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes. This one, 40. So that extra 5 minutes may not sound like much, but that's enough to risk a mechanical failure that Peter Shadowin just doesn't want to take the risk on.
So Huffaker able to open the gap a little bit over Fuller and Goodale. We're having a nasty scrap right here over a potential bronze medal. And don't forget Michael Lewis in the blue Mazda behind.
Jonathan Goodale's not afraid to pick a fight, so as soon as he gets a run, he is absolutely going to take a shot at it right underneath the rear hatch of that CRX. And those two, you can see a little bit of a move from Graham Fuller to try to protect exactly where he wants to be down this long back straight.
See all the leaves falling from the trees. There's been a brisk breeze each of the Haggerty race days here at these runoffs, Friday, Saturday, and today on Sunday. And that's helping to knock more of those beautiful autumn leaves off the trees, which they look great if they're laying on the ground not going anywhere. The problem is they're moving around, and a lot of them are winding up in the radiator inlets for some of these cars. And when that happens, engine temperatures can go sky high.
There's a couple on the front of Peter Shadowin, but look at how calm that car looks. He's absolutely slowed his roll. Of course, the faster he drives, the faster it's over with, but I think he's making the smart move here with a 1 minute plus lead. He can pretty much put the clutch in halfway around this track on that last lap. As long as he makes it up the last hill, he is cruising home to gold.
He's got that white flag. Huffaker maintains his gap over Fuller. So now Jonathan Goodale in that yellow Mazda MX-5 has to start thinking, where can I get him? What have I learned about this track? Which corner am I better in and how? And whoops, what's that big blue flash in my rearview mirror? Michael Lewis is right there.
Yeah, where did he come from? All of a sudden, this is a three-car battle for the bronze. Michael Lewis has found some pace, and I think with Graham Fuller being a little bit protective over Jonathan Goodale, that has slowed their roll a bit and allowed Lewis to come back to him. I think the problem is Lewis still doesn't really have the pace in that car to do much with him. He can cling onto the back, but he can't power by.
It's another old racing expression. Catching is one thing, passing something else entirely. So here we go. 14 corners, a little over 4 miles remaining.
Red flag over the battle for second, third, fourth, and fifth. All of these cars still in contention. Will Jonathan Goodale make a lunge on Graham Fuller and go for the bronze, or will these drivers be able to close the gap up to Joe Huffaker in the silver medals? We've got an MG Midget Honda CRX front-wheel drive car, an MX-5, and an older rotary Mazda, all in the hunt in GT Light.
Best passing opportunity on the track, we're told, is turn 5, and that's the next corner.
Graham Fuller, oh, go ahead.
Fuller in good shape. Goodale too far back to do anything. Same for Michael Lewis.
Yeah, Fuller with that engine swap after the third day of qualifying had no times that day and took his time over the last couple of days to put a new engine in it. Looks healthy. His straight line speed is giving him just enough of breathing room that Jonathan Goodale can't make a move, but Goodale's got a good run through turn 7. Here he comes, pokes to the outside, trying to fill the mirrors. He's going for it.
Yes, he is.
Goodale up on the curb, grabs a little bit too much of it and loses his momentum. Now they're 3
Here
wide
comes
coming
Lewis.
into the carousel.
Oh. Meanwhile, Upton so far ahead that we had to leave that battle to claim a national championship for Peter Shadowin. And look at this, all 3 of the 4 came to tears.
Yeah, this is really unfortunate. So Jonathan Goodale late on the brakes, grabs a little bit of curve. Michael Lewis goes to driver's left. I don't think Goodale sees him or just doesn't leave him enough space. Fuller, absolutely no idea that they were in there, and that is a massive hit, especially for Michael Lewis. Man, really hope that all 3 of those drivers are okay, because they didn't know they were 3 wide, and Michael Lewis did absolutely nothing wrong in that situation.
Unprotected concrete wall there, so that was a big hit. Meanwhile, Joe Huffaker goes serenely on his way. He may look back and wonder, where'd everybody go behind me? And he will head up the hill. Peter Shadowin has already been crowned national champion. In case you couldn't understand what I was trying to say, Joe Huffaker will claim the silver medal. This is our new 3rd place finisher, assuming he finishes. Bill Meyer in a Toyota Tercel out of Russellville, Missouri. We haven't called his number all race long, but he is going to wind up on the podium and talking to our man Hayward Wagner down in the finish area.
And that is Bill Meyer up from 10th place in his Toyota Tercel. There was a stream of them in contention for this position at multiple times throughout the race. We didn't expect it to be the 93, but Bill Meyer takes the checkered flag. He may not know it, but we know it. He gets the bronze.
You're absolutely right.
These drivers not able to separate themselves from each other the entire remainder of this race. Jamie Blust and Taz Harvey. Taz Harvey with a little bit of a run. The Miata still trying to work the draft off at the back of the midget. It's not going to do him any good. The midget pulls up the hill really well. And I think Jamie Blust is going to hold on to this one sure for what will become 6th and 7th.
Well done.
Little wave in the mirror back to Taz Harvey to say, good race, good try, but I got you.
And Peter Shadowlawn, in one of the more unusual races I've seen recently, comes home with the national championship.
Here's one more look at that incident. There's a challenge for the bronze medal. Watch Graham Fuller rejoin the track, has no idea that they are 3 wide, thinks they're 2 wide. Jonathan Goodale realizes they're 3 wide, stops, tracking over to the left, and that's what collected. Michael Lewis, all 3 go for a massive shunt into the bridge there coming into the carousel.
Wow.
But Peter Shadowin, a 3-time national champion previously, back just last year. He goes to back-to-back from VIR into Road America. Also won at Mid-Ohio in this CRX, and then all the way back to a little track called Road America. 10 years ago was his 3rd championship. So that makes it 4 in 1 decade for Peter Shadowin.
An enviable record, to be sure.
I really think he earned this one. The pace that he found in today's race is really impressive. And whether or not Bovis broke down, we might have had more of a race for it, but Peter Shadowin ran him down regardless and turned the fastest lap of the race, bested the qualifying time that Bovis was able to run, and put on a bit of a clinic by the time everything was said and done.
Well, we talked about the gaps. It's going to take a few minutes to collect our top 3 finishers. As Peter Shadowin brings his CRX to victory lane. Peter, he's not the first winner to come up here and see the track worker standing there and start pointing like, do I turn in here? Where am I going? I guess no one wants to risk the bad luck of asking about where I go as a winner until I've won.
And while we do the helmet and hat and mask dance for Peter Shadowin, we are hearing, I believe, all 3 drivers out of their cars over there in the carousel. Maybe some bruised ego and sheet metal, but I think all of the bodies are okay, which is the best news.
Absolutely. So the final race of these runoffs may be delayed by a few minutes while they clean up the area of that collision. Right now, let's go down and hear from our winner with Hayward.
Peter, just another uneventful GT Lights race, huh?
Yeah, certainly.
It looked like you were running the leader down there for a couple of laps before he might have had a problem, and you really just kind of took over the race from there.
Yes, yeah. The whole intent was try to get with Chris pretty quick. We had an awful week changing engines and just a comedy of errors going on, which isn't our usual deal. But we got through it, and I knew if I could get with Chris, we could probably try to hang with him. I didn't know if we could turn his qualifying times, but I thought we could at least make an effort. And a little scary on the first lap, top of turn 6, the rear stepped around on me. I thought maybe we had another oil leak or something on the right rear, but tires seemed to come up to temp, and then everything works good. And was slowly reeling in Chris, I think, and I don't know if that's because he was having a problem up to that point, but then he just gave in, and after that, it was just try not screw up.
Tom up in the booth was talking about this car, the unusual rear drive CRX. How much fun is this car to drive?
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. You know, of course, in a Honda CRX, it's odd to be able to put the throttle down and get it to kick out a little bit. But it certainly is a blast to drive, and the Goodyear tires were a great compliment on it. And it finally did well this week. I was starting to get disappointed and discouraged this week, but it finally came together today.
When it counted. Enjoy your victory lap, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations indeed to Peter Shadowin. Had a well-thought-out race and executed, and luck fell his way. And every racer will tell you, luck is a big part of a racer's success. Your podium finishers, Shadowin, Joe Huffaker, and Bill Meyer. Ben Landstout, Scott Toomey, Jamie Blust, Taz Harvey, Graham Fuller, Jonathan Goodale, and Michael Lewis, who were the three drivers involved in that big wreck down at the entrance to the carousel. And again, we're hearing good things. We trust that everything is okay with those three drivers. Boy, oh boy, just when you finish a race and you think, wow, that may be the best race of the weekend. That was interesting. That was different. They're going to be talking about that for a while. And then we roll another bunch of cars out there in another class and get more of the same.
Yeah, something I haven't seen in a long time. And also Peter Shadowin, I think, enjoys the largest margin of victory at these runoffs. 25 of 26 races complete. He was back so early that we don't even have the drivers out of the other cars yet. You see, I have to also look forward to the interview with the 93 car of Bill Meyer to find out at what point did he know he was a medalist at the runoffs.
Good point. Final margin of victory, 66.7 seconds, first to second. Back down to victory lane.
Joe, at the beginning of the race, you talked about this being a challenging 2020 and just kind of wanted to have fun with it. It looked like your strategy to stay clean probably worked pretty well as the rest of the race came crashing down around you.
It did, and it did that. It came crashing down around me, but rightfully so. You know, I'm still in F production trim. I didn't have a lot of chance to do anything to my car, but just put 100 pounds in it. So that's all going to change next year. So I plan on coming back for the next number of years, and me and Joe Carr are going to go race here for 15 more years.
A lot of people have talked this year about wanting to get back to normalcy. How did it feel to be in a race car at the runoffs for you?
It felt great. You know, I've never been to Road America in this capacity, and never been to Road America in this capacity. So I think I was at a vintage race about 4 years ago, and I got about 8 laps. So I got to learn everything on Thursday. So I was fortunate to be P2, and I just need a little Mugen power under the hood of that MG. And so, but it was great.
You heard it here first, folks. Joe Hoover coming back with a K-powered midget, right?
That's right.
We're going to see it. Thank you, Joe. We'll let you get to the podium.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Bill, come on up. Bill, I've only got really one question for you. How many times did they have to tell you you were third before you believed them?
At least twice. No, this is totally unexpected. I started 10th, and I figured top 6 maybe. So to finish third was like, this is my best ever.
Well, congratulations to you on the podium.
Thank you very much. And if I'm still on the air, thank you, Kyle Disk, for building it.
Well, we thank you, Bill, and congratulations on that surprise bronze medal here at the runoffs. Just an amazing race. When was the last time you saw a race, the highlights of which was how far ahead of the field the leader was, how close together everyone else was. At the beginning, it was Chris Bovis from a dominant pole taking off to an easy lead. Meanwhile, there was this kind of pushing and shoving going on behind among some very closely matched race cars.
I have to wonder if Joe Huffaker thought at that moment did the second place start to slip away, but it came back to him. Mechanical issues started to plague the field, and this was Peter Shadowin on a charge, setting the fastest lap of the race, running down Chris Bovis, who may have had an ailing car, starting to fall into the clutches of that yellow CRX, sweeps around the outside and easily takes the first place position. Bovis with a retirement moments later.
So it was all smooth sailing from there, right? Well, not quite. Maybe it was for Peter Shadowin, who went on to the national championship, but we had this great battle going on behind. We lost the first member of it due to mechanical errors, and then this moment through turn 5. Graham Fuller, Jonathan Goodale, and Michael Lewis turn 6, wound up door to door. As Tom mentioned, we don't think that they all saw each other. Everybody thought we were 2 wide, not 3 wide, but 3 into that space wouldn't go. A heavy accident took all 3 out. Meanwhile, half a lap away, Peter Shadowin was claiming the national championship. Another amazing twist to the drama that annually is the Scca runoffs. Congratulations to all of the finishers, all of the podium, and especially to 2020 class champion Peter Shadowin.